Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Pharma Fun for Us. So the video that we have today is the life cycle of a medicine part 2, the second part, the remaining stages in the life cycle of the medicine, that is the clinical trials and the marketing. So my name is Abidunita Begum. I have done masters in pharmacy and I am a technical and a soft skills trainer. Coming back to the video, the agenda of this video is includes all the proof of mechanism and principle confirmatory studies and regulatory submissions. So these are the clinical studies and then the marketing process of the drug that has been manufactured. So coming to the next step, proof of mechanism. So before even that, before starting a clinical study, a clinical trial application CTA must be submitted to the National Competent Authority, that is NCA, for approval. So the study in the humans, the study cannot start in the humans until the approval has to be that is received. It has to be received from the internal company review committee, the external ethics committee, and the external regulatory authority. So these three approvals, when you have, only then you can start a clinical study. After that, the clinical studies would start. So if a CTA application is granted, the safety and pharmacology of a candidate drug will be tested first. That will happen in a small group of healthy volunteers in the phase 1 trial. What happens in this? Small doses of compound will be administered to a group of 20 to 100 volunteers who are closely supervised. Then at least half of the compound with that will usually be considered safe enough to progress to the phase 2 trial. Then the phase 2 trial, what happens? You examine the efficacy of a compound in a volunteer patient or a subject, you can say. So they have the condition that the drug has to treat. The drug that has been is being manufactured to that intended to treat that condition. So the patient has that condition. To avoid unnecessarily exposing a volunteer or a subject to potentially harmful substance, these studies use the fewest number of patients. So possible to provide sufficient statistical power to determine efficacy. Usually 100 to 500 patients only. So these are monitored and assessed continuously. The aim of phase 2 studies is to determine the most effective dose and method of delivery. For example, method of delivery can be oral or intravenous through injections, that is through the veins. Then you need to know the appropriate dosing interval. What is the gap that has to be given between the doses, and to reconfirm product safety. Most drugs that fail during clinical trials in first we have seen the non-clinical trials where the drug fails. After that, in the clinical trials, the most drugs that fail, that happens in the phase 2 because they turn out to be ineffective and they have safety problems or intolerable side effects that are seen in the subjects or the volunteer patients. So this happens to be the phase 2 of the clinical trial. So out of the 10 medicines that are tested, only 2 on an average will continue to the next step, that is the phase 3. So the candidates that make it through the phase 2 will then be tested in a much larger population of patients in phase 3. In phase 3 trials, often 1,000 to 5,000 across multiple international sites. So the aim of these phase 3 trials is to reconfirm the phase 2 findings in a larger population. More population, or more subjects are taken in this, and to identify the best dosage regimen. What is the best dosage interval? What is the best dosage form that is to be taken? And what is the best route of administration? Could be oral, could be intravenous, or mm, anything like that, or intramuscular. What is the best route of administration and everything? These are the studies that are carried out. In doing this, the drug company needs to generate sufficient safety and efficacy data. The company has to know whether the data that they are providing is very efficient, is safe, to demonstrate an overall risk benefit for the medicine, to allow a submission to be made for a licensing application authority, that is the regulatory authority. Despite the rigorous testing that has already taken place, approximately 10% of the medicines, they will fail at this stage. Then coming to the marketing, the regulatory submissions. All the information first, the in the regulatory submissions, all the information on the medicine is sent to the regulatory authorities that we have seen, and this process usually takes 12 to 18 months. And medicine will not be allowed to enter the market until the regulatory authorities they have they are satisfied and they give their approval. Then comes the marketing. The process of drug development and marketing authorization is similar across the world. For those drugs that make it through the phase 3, a submission for marketing authorization is made to the national regulatory authority, like we have just seen. In the UK, this is the MHRA, and in US, it's the Food and Drug Administration. So the submission contains preclinical and clinical information obtained during testing, including information about the chemical makeup and the manufacturing process, the pharmacology, and the toxicity of the compound. Human pharmacokinetics, the ADME, that is the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion, and then the result of the clinical trials and proposed labeling. After that, if a license is granted, that is not the end of the process. The drug companies need more than a marketing authorization for most patients to be able to access the treatment. They also need a National Institute of Health and Care Excellence to recommend that it should be made available. So this Health and Care Excellence Institute, it makes its decision based on the cost and efficacy of a treatment to determine whether the cost benefit it offers is affordable. Then clinical trials may also continue. Regulatory authorities may insist on phase 4 trials for post-marketing safety surveillance. That is called as the pharmacovigilance. Post-marketing safety surveillance is the pharmacovigilance. Or they may be undertaken by the company to enable them to target distinct markets. For example, to enable the drug to be used in patients with complex medical problems or pregnant women who are unlikely to have been involved in earlier trials, and to ensure that they do not interact with other drugs. So that's about it. After the marketing, we also have the patenting part. What happens in this, the pharmaceutical companies will patent any molecule that shows promise, that shows, uh, early, or the shows good efficacy in the development process. Patenting, what does it do? It prevents other companies copying it for 20 years and covers many aspects of the intellectual property of the drugs. That could be the manufacture, formulation, and in some cases its uses also. The purpose of patent is to enable the pharmaceutical company that developed it to recoup their development costs and to make a profit to cover the development cost of drugs that failed during the process, as well as to invest in the development of future innovative drugs. By the time a drug has undergone the required testing and been licensed, half the patent period will usually have expired. Once a patent on a drug has expired, then after that, the generic version of the drug can be manufactured and marketed. So for some drugs, the period of patent protection can be extended for up to further 5.5 years, so long as this does not take the time in which the drug is under patent protection beyond 15 years. So after the date, it receives the regulatory approval. So now we understand why the generic version of the drugs are much cheaper when compared to the branded drugs, because branded drugs have gone all of this manufacturing process completely and then it reached there, while the generic drugs, they already have the the procedure and then they are preparing it. So that's all about it. I hope I have made myself clear. Thank you very much for watching the video patiently, and the feedbacks are most welcome. Goodbye.